Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Talking Ted, episode 12, the season finale of, I'll say season finale of Ted Lasso just aired. And so Tori and I, Danny, are here to give you all of our thoughts, our impressions, our feelings about this episode, and maybe a little bit about the whole series in general, and how this arc at least has come to its end. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Please sure to like, subscribe, and follow along with us for any future episodes that come out. So, Tori,
I don't even know where to
thoughts?
begin. I don't even know where to begin. So many thoughts. I mean, 4 years of our lives, truly 4 years, because it took a whole extra year to film. I'm like, I don't know my purpose or my personality anymore at this point, because I feel like Ted Lasso was such a big part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where to go from here, you know? So, oh man, thoughts. I think we got to start off by stating the obvious. The reaction was very mixed. If you look on Twitter, if you look on Instagram, if you look on Reddit, anywhere, the reaction, you either loved it or you hated it.
Yeah.
Very rarely did I see comments that were in between. So I think people were very passionate about their opinions on this final episode, which, you know, it's taken up 4 years of our lives. Obviously, had to bring the jersey for the last episode. But for being such a big part of our lives, people really, really had strong opinions about this episode. I personally loved it.
Okay.
Once it was over, hated it because it was over. And then I think my opinion changed a little bit as I started reading some opinions online. Because I think just watching it, it was just so feel good. You know, they told us from season 1, this is going to be a stereotypical sports movie ending, right? I feel like they packaged everything up pretty nicely. But there were a couple of things that I would have liked to see differently. So I was kind of one of those people who enjoyed it, but wished it went maybe some different ways. What were your thoughts?
Well, I enjoyed it. The whole series season finale as it was. I'm one of the excuse me. I'm in the camp of people who don't like to complain about content, so to speak, because not content, but the way it goes, because it's there for us to enjoy. Why am I going to spend my time hating on something that I've, like you said, invested 3-4 years of my life into? Yeah. So it's there. And yeah, if things didn't pan out the way I would have wanted it to, okay, fine. I still get to enjoy what they put out and get to enjoy the story that they told. So I mean, I really enjoyed the nuanced performances by all the actors in this episode. I mean, there was, I think, more to what was left unsaid than what was said. So
that's exactly right. You hit the nail on the head, man.
And it was just so, I mean, I watched it twice, just one time just to enjoy it and get the feeling, just to go back and then watch it again to see, you know, pick up on the things, like you said, what people were talking about on Twitter, and, you know, the different little details that they placed throughout the whole episode. And it was just so great. I mean, think about it now. I really did enjoy it. And I don't know why people are just like, oh, it didn't go the way I wanted. Didn't do this, didn't do that. It's like, just shut up and enjoy it.
Yes. Well, not just that too, but remember that these people and these writers have feelings, right? I have seen people online coming for Jason Sudeikis and the writers. And first off, y'all, come on. Anybody out there doing that? No, we're better than that, especially the Ted community. If there's one thing that this show and these fans and this family of people who share this beautiful thing that is Ted Lasso together, it's that, you know, kindness is so important. And you never know what someone's going through. And also, right, don't be judgmental, be curious.
There you go.
Of Ted Lasso. So if you're hating on the writers, and the creators of this beautiful show because it didn't end your way. Come on now. We're better than that, y'all. It's okay to have a different opinion, maybe not have loved the ending, but let's spread kindness, right? This might not actually be the end. Remember, I think the ending, they left it very open to potential spinoffs or another season. Okay, that's something that we can get to here. But I definitely don't think this is the end of Ted Lasso's universe. So,
yes, I agree. And I'm going to transition it from the Ted Lasso universe to the AFC Richmond universe.
Yes.
Because that's where we're heading. If there is a season 4 or a spinoff, it's not going to be, as Ted Lasso says himself, it was never about him.
Yes.
And I thought that was perfect because if you look back at the whole series so far, it never was about Ted Lasso. Yes, he was the star. The show was named after him, but it was always about what how the people evolved around him.
Yes.
And how they grew around him and how he was the shaper of men, I guess, and the way he helped other people grow. So it was never really about him, but how he influenced those in his universe, I guess.
Yes. I mean, exactly. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, you should know if you saw the episode. If you haven't seen it, we're very clearly talking about Trent Crimm's book, right? So finally find out in this episode, we were wondering, what's Trent Crimm going to name his book? Is it going to be Wayward Ted? Is it going to be The Lasso Way? What are they going to name it, right? The Greyhounds? I don't know. We finally find out the name of the book, and it is The Lasso Way, of course. And Trent actually hands the first copies to, or the rough drafts to Coach Beard and Coach Lasso, and he asks them to go through it, which I thought was very sweet of Trent. Again, this is the first time he's ever written a book, right? He's written stories. Writing a book is a completely different endeavor. And so I think it even shows his person growing, as a better person, as not just a journalist, but as something more than a journalist, right? A storyteller. I mean, I'm sorry. I have, journal writings. I don't want anybody to read my writings. People that it's about, read it first. That's growth and vulnerability. So we even see, Trent changing for the better after meeting Ted Lasso and Coach Beard. Of course, he becomes a little overly obsessive with their reactions. And I just think it's hilarious. Coach Beard is over here like, nope, you can't do this, scratching things out. And, all right. Pop out and not listen to this, and of course he's watching Ted and catches Ted laugh, and he's like, "Oh, see, you laughed, but not until page 47. What was so funny?" And Ted's like, "Listen, man, like, love you, bro, but back off, right? No one wants to laugh cop or whatever. The laugh, please."
Police, yeah.
So, Ted's really, really reading it, and Coach Beard ends up leaving like 1,000 notes. But they care. And like you said, what we were referring to, at the end, Ted gives the book back to Trent Crimm. And he says, "This is great, man. I loved it. I loved his little smiley face with the mustache. This is incredible, man. Great job. But I think you should go with a different title. This was never about me. It never was."
Yeah.
And I think this season 3 reflects that entirely. Like you said, season 1, Ted is in every episode. Season 2 becomes less and less. Season 3, I mean, Ted was barely in season 3 at all, it seems like. Just for like a scene or two here and there. And especially the last episode. He seems like a man of less words than he used to be. What were your thoughts on his kind of emotional state, where he was at?
So throughout this episode, I guess there was a lot of talk online about Jason Sudeikis' performance being kind of robotic in a way. And I think that was by design. I think he did that intentionally because as his character, and as Rebecca said, maybe this is your home. And when Rebecca finally talked to Ted when they're sitting in the stands together. And I think if he had opened up, he would never have been able to get back home.
Yes.
Because he realizes that, she's right. This is also my home, but I do have a yearning and my heart is with my son in Kansas. So if I start talking about it, if I start thinking about it overly, I'm not going to leave. And I think when I watched his performance, it displayed that, because it was a man who was trying to keep it together, trying not to burst into a bubble of tears or become a blubbery mess. And it just, when you're going through stuff like that and you don't want to get too emotional, you just kind of like try and robot, just be, just try and box it all out and just get through the day. Wow. So I think he did a great job of displaying how we all would feel in that moment, I think.
Yes. And I think that you nailed it, man. Like, I didn't realize how little emotion he showed until the second time I watched it because online talk. Because the whole first time that I'm watching it, I'm just so emotional during the episode, and I'm just hanging on to every word, that I wasn't really judging his acting and his performance as much as I was like, what's going to happen, And it was the time when I did realize, I'm like, oh, he isn't talking that much. And his reactions are kind of robotic. And why isn't he opening up and being vulnerable? I mean, Rebecca just pours her heart out in one of the most fantastic speeches of the freaking entire show, and he can't even say anything back. I was a little disappointed after going back and looking at that, but I think you're right. I think we like to think of Ted as this animated cartoon of a person, which he was in season 1. But at the end of the day, he's just a man, a man hurting and torn with a clearly huge decision that's going to hurt lots of people either way. And so at that point, it is a little too much to react maybe. And he's just like, sometimes things are better said undone. And I just got to sit here and just stick with the choice that I made. Man, yeah, but I didn't even realize that the first time that I was going through it. Definitely did. Another thing we have to talk about, we'll get back to sort of Ted and Rebecca emotions and that speech in the stadium, which again was a callback to many pieces of season 1 and season 2. There were so many callbacks in this.
Yeah, there was.
But can we talk about the first 15 seconds of the frickin' episode? Because what a frickin' fake out. Jason Sudeikis, you deserve to sit in a jail cell for that. I'm just saying, stick to jail. That was just so mean. But also, thank you. Because for 1 second, all of us Ted Becca stans got to believe that Ted and Rebecca got together. And for a couple of moments, like I had the most war. I remember watching it, and I remember how I felt more than I remember the actual scene. But I just remember the feeling that I had with like the Grinch, right? Like his heart grew 3 times. And when I thought they had slept together or like finally admitted their love for each other, my heart was like, and I was just like so warm and fuzzy. And I'm like, and then of course, like, he's like, do you want to talk about it? And she's like over here, like, and of course, I think that they're talking about sleeping together or being together. No, it's all a freaking fake out. And then you see like Coach Beard walk in a freaking banana hammock, which, props to him for
I had a coil.
And then I'm over here like, did they have a 3-way? Like, what happened? And Jane walks out and I'm like, oh my gosh, what? Of course, like this, I'm confused at this point. We later find out no one slept together. Well, Beard and Jane did, but it was all a fake out, which brilliant writing, brilliant editing, so freaking annoying. I literally audibly went, what? There was a gas leak in their apartment or something like that. And Rebecca just let them all stay the night.
Yeah.
That's all it was. It was a fake out. So rude. We eventually find out that what he was talking about when he asked her, are you ready to talk about it, was him. So, hey, tricky writing, but bravo, because you freaking fooled us all. But I will say we did for 15 seconds have that, oh my gosh, they got together. All I need, honestly, all I needed was, even if it's fake, that feel.
I want to
Jason's
know who
writer.
chose. I want to know who chose Coach Beard's ensemble for right there. A crop top, the darkness outfit, and like you said, a thong. That was hilarious.
It was Jason and Brendan for sure. No doubt in my mind it was the two of them. But those opening credits, man, I don't think I've ever seen a bigger fake out, except for in the funeral episode when they rickrolled us.
Oh yeah.
That's the other time. So stupid. But I as much as I hate it, I do have to admit that was brilliant writing. Just a great fake out. Gosh darn it. But anyways, and I will say one thing that I didn't like about this episode and a couple of parts of this season, I really feel like we didn't get to see important parts of the story that I would have liked to see. Like they sort of fast forwarded and skipped things that I would have wanted to see. Like I would have wanted to see Ted telling Rebecca that he's leaving. I would have wanted to see that scene and the emotion between them two. And I think Hannah would have acted the hell out of that scene, honestly.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I would have liked to have seen Ted telling the team. I would have liked to have seen his conversation with Coach Beard and Roy. I mean, they just kind of skipped past that. And I want to say, I want to be angry and say that that's just lazy writing. And maybe they just didn't have enough episodes to squeeze that in. But I can't say that. I think it was very intentional. But those are things that as a fan, I feel like we deserve to see those moments.
Do we though? I don't know.
We saw two very big truth bombs in the other seasons. And then they leave us on a freaking cliff with this third truth bomb. And then we don't even get to see it. We just have to assume what happened. And there are moments I think I would have liked to have seen as a fan.
Okay, I can understand that, but they didn't really. I mean, it wasn't really a cliffhanger. I think at the end of the previous episode, because we knew already what he was going to say when he had a truth bomb. We knew what that was going to be.
Right.
Did we have to see that scene? And well, first off, yes, Hannah would have acted the hell out of it as she always does. Throughout this whole season, she's been fantastic. But I think it's one of those things that, I didn't need to see it personally. I think it was just fine as it was because I knew what happened. I didn't need to see Ted break down and tell the whole team what was about his decision to leave and go home or the way it would have went. I mean, so he stands in front of the locker room and everyone gathers around and he says, "Hey guys, I've decided this is my final game. I'm heading home after this season. I got to be there for my son." I think I don't know, maybe it would have diminished his halftime locker room speech that he gave because that was really his farewell address. And
True.
It was such a great speech. We'll get to that in a little bit. Because I want to touch on another farewell moment that happened in this episode. But I just don't think we need to see everything. It's like the implied moments, and it's kind of like when you're reading a book,
right?
And you picture it in your head what's happening, right? So those in between moments, we knew what they were. So I just filled the gaps in with my mind. I didn't really need to see it. And I don't know if it's lazy writing or just, but it's just, I didn't need it to complete the story.
Right. And like I said, maybe lazy writing isn't the correct term there. That's actually what one of my, he was very upset about this episode. And that's what he said it felt like. It felt more like time lapse. Right. And Jason and the writers obviously assumed that as fans we're smart to fill in the gaps, which credit to him, he trusted us to fill in those gaps and we did. But again, as someone who has felt like this is a family, like I would have wanted to see how he dealt with telling these people goodbye, because I use quotes from this show all the time, right? I've sort of used the manual of how to treat people at work, how to apologize, how to deal with my feelings. There's so many times where the scene where he's talking and apologizes to Nate in season 1, about yelling at him in the hotel room for sliding the notes under his door, I'll go up to people and say, hey man, sorry I bit your head off yesterday. I really was just overreacting, so I'm really sorry, and just like using those exact words that he said. I think I would have liked to have seen that speech of how do you tell people that you love them, but you're leaving them? I don't know, but digress. Anyways, we'll continue on. Agree to disagree.
Well, one thing we can agree on is I'm thinking that we can is the little song performance by the team after the final practice was just brilliant.
Perfect.
It was so after the final practice and Roy calls whistle, and then he walks off and you see Coach. We hear music start to play. We see Coach Beard say, what is this? And they turn around, and then the whole team. We see Sam Osanya start singing. Of course, he's singing the goodnight song or the farewell song from Sound of Music. And I just started laughing. I just started busting up. It was just perfect.
Isaac and Sam were good singers. Mm-hmm. I mean, when Isaac started singing, also a rare Isaac McAdoo smile, by the way. I was impressed. Isaac was a killer singer. So, I mean, they killed this entire, scene. They clearly practiced it. I loved how everyone went all out. It was just such a perfect farewell song for, Coach Lasso and Beard, who have given so many musical references.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real. All of those references, Ted Lasso was for the theater kids. Okay.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many inside jokes, Hamilton jokes, Sound of Music jokes. So we assume that they've been practicing behind the coach's backs, which that thought is just adorable to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I thought it was great. And then Danny ending it with adios, and then the entire crowd erupting.
Well, not even that. They were also in on the very last goodbye. So the crowd must have been somehow involved with the planning of it because everyone was there. Goodbye at the very end. So it was just like the feeling that they all came together to give Ted this goodbye, this farewell performance, because, Ted planned in season 2, Dr. Sharon's in sync performance of goodbye that they never got to perform. So the fact that the team decided to do this for him, and they involved the fans who had been coming to the practices, once they opened it up and were now a bigger part. Not that they weren't a big part of the team to begin with, but now they were even bigger part of the team because they were involved with the practices and saw it on a daily basis. So to involve them, it was just a chef's kiss. I thought it was just wonderful.
Yes, and there's actually a ton of people that were upset about that because they thought it was just so out of character for the show. And I'm like, if you've really been paying attention to the show, this was so Ted Lasso-esque. I mean, this was going to happen at some point. I'm surprised they didn't do a musical episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that. It was so heartwarming how everyone was in on it. Trent Crimm's over here, throwing his blazer around. But I also think it was so emotional for me watching that because you can just imagine they weren't just singing that or doing that scene to Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
That scene was for Jason Sudeikis.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that was sort of a goodbye to all of the actors and the writers and the showrunners and the editors, production staff. I think it was a lot deeper than we think it was. That was an actual goodbye to the show. So that's why I got so emotional. I mean, I had a couple of tears there after it finished up because it was just so powerful.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was just beautiful. I loved that. But let's get to the main part, right? So obviously, the most important part of this episode, the big game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it all comes down to this, which we knew it would, West Ham versus AFC. They are playing for the title in the Premier League. But there's a twist. Manchester City is also still in the running. They either have to tie or
lose
to Premier title, but if they score, then they could win the Premier title with West Ham or AFC wins. So it's a little tricky. But of course, all we care about is West Ham versus AFC Richmond. So, you want to kick us off with that game?
Yeah, with the game, I want to start a little bit before the game.
Sure.
So we get to see a moment where Roy Kent finally decides to become a diamond dog.
Oh,
and I thought that was very telling and moving of his character moving along and becoming a more well-rounded human. And there were some scenes that led up to that with him and Jamie Tart fighting over Keeley that we didn't touch on that much, but it's okay because it was, I think, a side story to get Roy to the Diamond Dogs and to get in there and share his emotions and his feelings and be willing to talk with other men about those feelings because he's never wanted to be a part of it. He never wanted to join in on that, whether it be, he always was sitting off to his desk, which is outside of the room, and he was kind of eavesdropping and listening, but he never directly involved himself.
Exactly.
So before the game, he brings up, hey, can I be a diamond dog? And I thought it was hilarious that they were all looking for hidden cameras because they thought they were being pranked.
They're like, I know.
And of course he tells his that for the last year he's been trying to be a better person and how can it work. And I think what Higgins says, the very last thing that Higgins tells, his last bit of Higgins advice, which is always so great, is that human beings are never going to be perfect, Roy. The best we can do is keep asking for help and accepting it when you can. And if you keep doing that, you'll always be moving towards better. And I thought that was so perfect.
Higgins, I mean, what a man, character, always showing up in the right moments for people when they need it most.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of character growth. It's funny that he says that when, as a fan and as someone watching, I feel like he has had great character growth throughout the series. But obviously, if that's you can't see that. I mean, he had a couple of mistakes and faltered a little bit, especially asking Keeley who she sent that video to. Nobody's perfect, right? But he's come a lot farther than he thinks he has. And I think that's and that all of us need to do on ourselves sometimes. So what a powerful quote from Higgins, and seeing be a part of the Diamond Dogs and bark with them at the end. I love that. I think it was, again, a full circle moment for Roy's character.
It was great. I mean, and to have Nate back in that fold, and it was just, the perfect reunion. And also Trent Krim says, hey, I'm going to step out, let you guys have your reunion. And Ted's like, no, you're part of the gang now. You're in it. You're part of the squad. I thought that was so funny, so cool that, because I guess, Trent's always been the journalist covering them for the Independent to start with. And now he's part of the squad. I thought that was just so full circle for him as well. Or not full circle, but just, just bring him into the fold. I thought it was so great. And there was a little bit before that Roy asks a question that had been repeated a couple of times by Nate. How do you know if a girl likes you? I thought that was funny when Roy asked that question, and he was like, Diamond Dog moment, but he didn't. That was before this. I'm backtracking a little bit, but I digress. It was a great way to, final Diamond Dog moment of the arc of this season, and it just really brought closure to the group of men that are sharing their feelings, I think. And it always, and I'll leave it with what Higgins said at the end, always keep asking and accepting help when you can. And that's hard even for me. So that's something that a lot of people have trouble with, because we hate asking for help. And when it is given, we hate having to accept it, because it means it can sometimes feel like we're not good enough to do it on our own, which is something that, I struggle with. I don't want to have to feel like I need help, but we all need help every now and then.
Yes.
And I think them voicing that, it was just such a perfect way to show people, you know what, you can't do this life thing alone. You're going to need help. So just keep accepting it. And that's going to make you towards being the better person.
Yes. Well, and speaking of help too, Nate is back, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's team. We later find out he's the assistant kit man, not quite brought back as a coach, right? He's got to earn his spot.
Right.
Fair enough. But he was invited to the Diamond Dogs meeting, and he finally gets to tell everyone, I've got a girlfriend, by the way, after his failed meeting the love hounds.
Yeah.
He finally gets a moment to tell everybody that he's got a girlfriend. Everyone's super proud of him. And we have this moment between Ted and Nate, right? It's after we see Rebecca and Ted sitting in the stands, the iconic shot where, again, we mentioned her, she pours her heart out. If you go, I go.
Yeah.
That's not something that soulmates tell each other. Come on. Friends, whatever. But what a vulnerable thing to say. And what an honor to say. And her asking him, no, Ted, please stay.
Yeah.
I mean, and the fact that she sits right next to him in that seat, right? Season 1, Rebecca never would have done that. No. She would have sat in between them like Roy did, right? No, but they are best friends. They're soulmates. There's a red string tying them together, and they are there for each other, and they've always been there for each other now. So they have that very vulnerable moment. Unfortunately, he says he's going to stay, and she knows that. But she does say that she was willing to sell the team. The highest paid coach in the league. She has this whole plan, bring Henry over to the UK. Michelle can come over too. She's thought all this through.
Yeah, she's been thinking about it. Yeah, absolutely.
And she asks, Higgins earlier, what happens? How much is it if I sell the entire team? Right? And he says $2 billion. Oh, she could very well do it. I mean, you could tell she really wants him to stay. And it's just such a heartbreaking moment where she knows what his answer is.
Yeah.
But says, I just had to try.
Yeah.
And so that is the moment that we're coming off of. It's already been an emotional night for Ted. Ted walks out of the locker room and he happens to see Nate standing there looking up at the very sign that isn't there right over your shoulder. Because man, I tore that thing down. And that's what he's thinking about. Of course, Ted scares him. I love how I was trying to come in soft like a human cotton ball. But that's the moment that we've been waiting for since Nate's apology, Nate's redemption, Nate coming back to the light side, finally leaving the dark side. And we have this cathartic moment, father and son moment almost, where Nate's like, I'm so sorry. And Ted doesn't even, Nate doesn't even have to say anything. Ted's just like, look, man, I already forgave you a long time ago. We're good. And I love how he tells Nate, you tore that thing down once. I tore the sign down into a million little pieces, and I love how he ends it with like, hey, we're good. We're okay. It's just funny because I look up there and I still see it.
Yeah.
And Nate's like, you, man. And it's not weird of you to say that. It's beautiful. They're finally good to go. Again, we were right. He took out all of the anger on his dad on Ted.
Yeah.
And it was just so nice to have that. I bawled my eyes out at that scene too. At this point in the episode, I cried 3 times already. Oh man. I mean, that alone made the episode worth it for me.
Yeah.
Because we needed that, and Nate needed that, and Ted needed that more than anybody. It was the first to talk about it.
I think you're right that we needed that as fans, because that was like the one thing that I wanted was Nate to make amends with Ted directly. And once I got that from him and got this, that's one thing I'm glad they didn't leave off screen, right? Was that if they had not included that on screen, I think then I would have been very upset, because that was a closure moment for us. And just seeing that and seeing, like you said, Ted didn't need the apology because he already forgave him. And he said, you don't got to say it. But Nate was like, let me say this. And he apologized. And it was just such a moment where it was like, okay, the world is right again. The
Yeah.
Lasso universe is right again. We got that, and it just felt so good hearing it and watching that scene.
We needed it. We truly did. So that was sort of the last scene that I think we needed. Do we want to get into the whole Jamie and Keeley fight before the game, or do we want to come back to that?
We can get into it real quick. So to me, it was more for it was just a humorous way. Roy and Jamie go to a bar, and Roy tells, "Hey, me and Keeley are talking again. Back off. I don't want to see you get hurt." And I think Roy was really coming at that from a friendship.
I agree, but also a little jealousy.
Yeah, oh yeah, he saw them.
Yeah.
So yes, friendship and also a little jealousy, like you said, and he said that no matter what happens, I'm proud of you this season, and I don't want to see you get hurt with Keeley. So, and we're talking, I don't want you to have to, get your heart broken again, because he thinks that he's going to end up with Keeley. And then that's when Jamie tells him, "Hey, she sent that video to me." Fast forward to outside Keeley's house where we see them, Roy's shirt ripped.
They both backslid there so much.
And that's life.
I know
it really is.
I know that's honestly more true to real life than anything, but I wish that they hadn't.
Oh yeah.
Because that's where they were going. But you're right. That is how it probably would have played out in the real world. We're humans, we make mistakes.
Well,
we think of them being perfect characters. We expect so much from them. And then we have to be reminded, oh, they're human too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think if one of my good friends and I like the same girl, especially, within that little close triangle that they had, because they were all, I guess, a group of friends in a way, because they went through, to Man City, to Jamie's old house. And so they were a pretty close, tight friendship. And if my friend would have been like, I'm going after her, no, and I secretly had feelings for her as well, and it's going to erupt. And I think the most telling part is that after they met with Keeley, and they basically realized how big of an idiots they were. Hey, you hungry? Yeah, let's go eat. And so that friendship was able to endure that, but it was something that boiled over, that had to come out at some point. Because it was all season long, it was building up towards that love triangle of the three of them there. And, at some point, something was going to happen that they were going to fight it out. Not for her. Well, yeah, I guess it was for her, but it was just true life. That's what's going to happen. But the fact that their friendship was able to withstand that, I thought was really nice.
Yes. And I do, at the end of the day, agree with everything that you said. It is more true to real life. But sometimes in these fantasy worlds, I'm like, man, I wish everything all good, because Jamie's character has made such strides. I just felt like that backslide didn't erase everything that he had done, but it kind of made me be like, man, you've come so far, bro. Like, this isn't like you at all anymore. It just seemed a little out of character for season 3 Jamie. But again, we're not perfect people.
Well, I mean,
how Keeley kicked them both out. The easy been to choose one of them, right? But I think that shows Keeley's maturing and her singleness. Maybe this is going to be a season of singleness for Keeley, and she's going to really own that and, learn to date herself in a sense, right? Who is Keeley Jones on her own? Right. She's just up a PR firm by herself. She has to focus on that with her and Barbara. This is Keeley Jones's time to shine. And I love that she chose, well, if you guys are going to make me choose, then I'm not going to choose at all. I'm choosing myself.
Exactly.
So, woman power. Love that for her. Because she didn't need to end up with a man. And I'm okay with that. I thought that played out at the end. Roy and Jamie are friends. Keeley is fine with kicking them both to the curb, and you go, girl.
And you mentioned about it, Jamie's character showing growth, and he did. And I think when it comes to love and things of the heart, we do wacky stuff. Yeah, we really do. So, I mean, was it out of character and from his emotional growth and arc? Yes and no. Because
Yeah.
when it comes to love and stuff like that, and the matters of the heart, all things are out the window. No matter how much we think we've grown, we're right back to where we were once it comes to, feelings, I think.
That's a great point. You're totally right there. So it is what it is. And
there you go.
they're separate now, which is cool. So it'll be interesting if there is another season or another spinoff, how those characters will interact in the future.
Absolutely.
But I think it's finally time for us to get to the game, right? The big game.
The big game.
For 3 seasons is this. So right before they go out into the field, of course, Ted and Beard have this maybe not so great idea to show them a very emotional video. And it's sort of a look back at all the 3 years of the coaches being there. And they all have their special moments. Each of the players gets to see a meaningful moment. And it's really a cool, again, I don't think this was so much for the actual characters as much as it was for the actors. I think all of their reactions were very real.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they go out to the field and we see this funny, interaction of the other team looking all tough and ready to go. And the announcement, how you come out on the field is really important. It tells a lot about how you're going to play. And the Richmond players are just bawling their eyes out. And Roy crying. That was like, I never thought it was great. I didn't know I needed to see Roy Kent crying. But that's how they start the game off. They're emotional messes, right? And they have a great first half, right? Everything seems to be going pretty well for them. And they're fighting hard regardless of how they started the match. But they're trying their best.
They're trying their best, but they go into halftime down 2-0.
Yes.
So it's West Ham 2, Richmond's title hopes 0, as the announcers put it at halftime. And so the West Ham seem to be missing. So they're just off. All their shots are just off the mark. And it's just like, okay, so maybe something's just a little off. Maybe they are a little more emotional, like you said, because of the video that was just well produced by Coach Beard. and so everything was just a little off kilter. So they go into halftime and Ted Lasso makes his last locker room halftime speech.
One of the I'd add.
Yes. And this, like you've said throughout the rest of the episode, I think this was Jason Sudeikis addressing all the actors in the room, not Ted Lasso talking to the players. It was just a perfect speech. And I think it was also a foreshadowing to what we see at the end of the episode. So one thing that really, the line that caught me is learning all about the men you were and getting a front row seat to see the men you have become.
Yes.
So that line stuck with me. It really did. And especially when we get to the very last scene of this episode.
I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry.
So you said about it getting emotional when he was giving that speech. That really touched me because it was more than just Ted Lasso addressing, like I said, his players. Jason Sudeikis was talking to all the actors, all the crew, everyone, that it's been the best 3 years of his life, and maybe it really has.
It has been. I mean, you see their interviews, and every single character or every single actor, every single person who worked on this show says it changed their life.
Exactly.
Better. And if I'm correct, I believe I saw somewhere online saying this was the last scene that they shot.
Oh, wow. Really? Okay.
Who maybe aren't familiar with acting and shooting movies or TV shows, you don't actually
do it in order. Yeah.
They happen, right? A lot of times maybe you'll shoot the last scene first or whatever. You'll shoot all the outside scenes because you only have the field rented for the day. And so if I'm correct, I believe this was the last scene that they ever filmed in this locker room. And then they wrapped and tore down the set.
Wow.
So you're absolutely right. This was much deeper than Coach Lasso talking to AFC Richmond's players. This was Jason talking to every single person involved in the production of this TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I don't know how the heck he got through it without crying. I would have been just bawling.
Well, he did break a little bit during his speech, and the emotion did come through, and I heard that and I saw that, and that's when we got to see that emotion and how hard he was trying to bottle it up and how hard it was for him to not just let it all out there. But some did leak out during that speech, and I thought it was it just told the story for the whole episode, and it was just so perfect.
Well, and then of course it's the end of the speech, right? He's done talking kind of, I can't remember exactly how he wrapped it up, even though I've seen it twice. But we see the players do something absolutely incredible, heartwarming, just gorgeous.
Yes.
Every single one of the players, like what they did in this next scene shows exactly the impact that Ted Lasso made on all of their lives, right? So, of course, the speech is coming to an end, and it's Sam. He says, "Doesn't Coach
Anyone
Lasso
have anything else?"
And Sam stands up, right? And he says, and he pulls something. We're wondering what it is. We don't know what it is. He pulls something out of his locker or something like that, and he goes and sets it on the table. And then Jamie and all them start doing the same thing, and all the players are reaching for something in their shin guards, in their, captain's band, whatever. And we're like, what is that? And as people start grabbing them, we're realizing, hey, I think it's pieces of the Believe sign. Don't know yet, but I think before I move on, it's important to note everyone had a separate place for this piece of paper. And Jamie was in the book, if you remember from season 1, that Ted Lasso gave. All the players, which we saw Jamie throw his copy away because he didn't care, but he was using this yellow paper as a bookmark. And it was a Scott F. Fitzgerald book. And oh my gosh, I just lost the name of it right now. The Beautiful and the Damned, I believe, is what it's called.
Something like that. Yeah.
It's about vanity and blah, blah, blah. Exactly what Jamie needed to read. Anyways, so he's been reading this book the whole time that Ted gave him. So that means that he either went back and bought it again, or he fished that thing out of the trash can after throwing it away.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was a cool callback to season 1. Anyways, they all bring these yellow pieces of paper back together, and we slowly pan out, and we're able to see that it is the Believe sign. Everybody had kept a little piece of it and had used that as motivation to keep going. And of course, scramble and put it all back together. And we just see how moving and emotional it is. And my goodness, I don't think in my wildest dreams of writing would I have ever been able to write something as beautiful as that.
Yeah.
I mean, props to everyone on the writing staff. That was such a thoughtful, creative way to do that.
It really was.
For years, they've been thinking about this for years, how they were going to end this. I mean, I lost it during that moment. I don't know about you. I couldn't even stop crying. I had to pause it and then get myself back together before I could keep watching it, because it was so powerful.
It was very powerful, and I enjoyed watching it. I don't know if I got as emotional as with the speech, but it was like a surge of happiness that they did this. It was just like, yes, they did it. Yeah, he's got a piece. And to see that they all kept it in a meaningful place to them, to each player, it was just wonderful to watch. And then you see, as they're putting the pieces together, we see a look between Ted and Nate. They're staring at each other and they catch each other's eye. And it was just so wonderful. And that whole moment. And of course we learn there's number 4, the number 4 item.
Yes. And Trent is there watching the whole thing. Oh, it's just beautiful. Beautiful. And again, it shows how much of an impact Ted has had on all those players. He doesn't care about wins or losses. They have all become better human beings.
Yeah, exactly.
And for knowing him. And that's how we should leave people.
Yeah.
Oh man, what a perfect wrap to that. And what a great way to motivate everybody in the second half, right?
Yes.
And they go energy. They are vibing. They're gelling. They're going down the field. They score. They're catching back up. Jamie's heart is just absolutely on fire. And that really upsets Rupert.
It absolutely does. And especially after Jamie Tart is fouled in, he gets a penalty kick, and then he passes the ball over to Danny Rojas. Take the shot. Danny Rojas gives the ball over to Captain Isaac.
Yeah.
Isaac's like, what? Because he's never taken a penalty shot in his life because that's not his position. And he tries to pass it off to Collins, and Collins like, just take the shot. So we see him line up, and the funny thing was we see Higgins like protect his wife because the last time when McAdoo kicked it, he broke the window.
Yes, he remembers. And then we also see the Greyhound, right?
With the little helmet.
Has the helmet.
So Isaac takes the shot, and everyone thinks he missed, but he actually kicked it through the net. So it was just so wonderful to see that. And of course, it goes through the net and redirects and right into John Wing Knight's face, breaks his nose. And then Barbara, of course, who's a bloodthirsty, rugby-loving fan, stands up and goes, yes, finally.
Okay, I love Barbara. That's my girl, by the way. I'm glad that she's stuck. People were wondering, like, what's the point of her? Okay, she was clearly the comedic relief, and she was clearly a new friend to Keeley, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I just love that they included her in that final game because they didn't have to, right?
Right.
So much better. What a great scene there. The captain puts it through the goal. Of course, it's tied now, I believe. And so Rupert comes down.
Yes.
He's like, a very pivotal scene here for Rupert, right? Like, people didn't like him anyways because all of a sudden, now he is finally being called out for sexual assault and sexual harassment in the workplace. So quite a tumultuous day, quite a tumultuous reign owning West Ham. He's clearly not a great owner, manager of a soccer team, because I think Rebecca puts it perfectly, right? Like, and Sassy, they both put it perfectly. You can't even control two football clubs. Like, you've lost both of them.
Yeah.
And so obviously there's a whistleblower, his assistant, and Bex have left him. Bex divorced him. So this is not his week. And so this kind of pushes him over the edge. He comes down to the field looking very much like the Chancellor, Darth Vader, whoever you say, very ominous, cape-like villain, very clearly a villain. And we also find out that the old AFC Richmond manager with the shorty shorts is now West Ham manager.
Yeah, George. Yeah, that's what I kind of figured was going to happen there.
We have this scene between him and Rupert, and we already don't like George, right? Like, the guy kind of sucks. And Rupert tells him, take out Jamie Tart. And we think, George is just going to go along with it, right? He's kind of vile and sick himself. But, we see him kind of draw the line in the sand. Like, look, might not be the best guy, but I'm not going to do that. That's wrong. And he stands up for him. So that kind of made me gain some respect. Then we have this scene where everybody's watching, Ted's watching, and Rupert just pushes George down. Of course, things are seen.
There's 3 balls on the field now.
But it was just this like moment. Yeah. Like, this doesn't happen.
No.
Right? And so it's this very awkward moment for Rupert. Seals his fate. Everybody hates him now. And it's just this very vile moment of insecurity.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel sorry for Rupert because you look at Ted's face and Ted kind of feels for him. But it's just such a horrible thing to do that at the end of the day, you're like, you really are just not a good person.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you said it right and hit it on the nail on the head right there, that Ted did feel sorry for him. And I did have that moment where I felt bad for him as well. Because here is this older gentleman, and his age is really starting to shine through because of all the stress he's been under. He's walking with a limp. Yeah, he might be villain and a man on a purpose, but he's also a human. And I love how the roles switch now. All he wants to do is beat Rebecca. Well, now Rebecca doesn't care anymore. And so we see him, and that's like his main motive for this whole entire game. beat her, beat her, beat her. I can't lose to her. And so when he's walking down the field, he's looking like just the epitome of a villain. Yeah, you say Darth Vader, that maybe the Emperor Palpatine, but when I saw him, I saw like oh, I just had it. Who is it? Like Scar from the Lion King. He has
Oh,
this like face of determination, just like everyone's against him and he just really wants to win no matter what. And then
yeah.
when he's walking off the field after everything that transpired, and everyone's calling him a wanker. And it just for a moment, maybe as brief and or as fleeting as it might have been, I felt bad for him.
Yeah.
I really did. I felt, yeah, he brought this all on himself, but
Yep. He's a human.
he's a human, and it's just, maybe, yeah, I don't know. I just felt bad for him. I really did, and it didn't end with because I guess I feel bad because we knew his backstory, how much he loved AFC Richmond from his when they went to the meeting at the luncheon with about the Super League, and we
Yeah.
learned his backstory and how much he snuck into the field and how much he loved it. And it just, I don't know, it just felt really sad to me. Maybe that's it. It just felt really sad.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah. I agree. Like I think it is sad, but at the end of the day, he's the only character that wasn't redeemed, right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, Andy, kind of both, but him. But he did it to himself. Everybody was so willing. Rebecca was willing to forgive and forget.
Mm-hmm.
Him. They moved on. He
Mm-hmm.
lost credibility. He lost his wife. He
Yep.
lost the team. But he did it all to himself. So
Absolutely.
the one thing he was this game, right? So I think the message there was like, you're the only one really in control of your own happiness. And he was the only one that just could not and would not, be a kind person.
Yeah. He couldn't get out of his own way. Mm-hmm.
But it was his choice. He had so many times where he could have been redeemed and he just didn't want to.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, we see Ted feel bad for him because, of course, Ted tries to see the best in everybody. It was ironic that they were calling him a wanker when they used to call Ted that. And Ted knows what that feels like for an entire stadium of thousands of people to be yelling that at you.
Mm-hmm.
But again, credit to the actor playing Rupert. I mean,
yeah, he did a great job.
Act so vile and cruel and mean and be able to make us believe that and feel that, but then also feel bad for you. That's hard.
That is. That's absolutely.
Anyway, so we'll move on from that. Of course, at the very, very end of the game or the match, as they would say, it all leads up to this, right? Mm-hmm. They're about to score West Ham taking it down the field. They're about to score. They do score. Man, we think it's over, just like season 2.
Yep.
Everybody, but Ted starts laughing, and this was so perfect because he goes, "What?" Coach Pierce's like, "What are you laughing?" He's like, "Oh, he was offsides."
Mm-hmm.
What offside means? Like, he's never known,
right?
But then they have a review of the play, and they call back the goal, and Ted's like,
mm-hmm. Yep,
gotcha. And then we see Beard hand Ted a $5 bill or whatever it was.
He looks.
He's looking at it. He's like, "This is not a reflection on you. It's not counterfeit." But I mean, it was back all the way to season 1, the pilot episode. Mm-hmm. Ted didn't even know what offsides was. And so yet another callback to an earlier moment where he finally gets it, and how perfect that he gets it in his final game, and he's the only one that's right. I thought that was just great. And then the final play here, of course, there's a couple of seconds left for Richmond to try to score. They take it down the field. They don't know what to do. And so they're trying to figure out a play. And so what do? Ted turns around, looks at Nate, calls Nate over, back to be a part of the team, and says, what does he say? He says,
he hands him a trophy. He says, "Here, hold this." And he's like, it's an Oscar or an ESPY. And like, he's like, "It's heavy." And then Sam and Jamie finally realize, oh yeah, it's Nate's play from season 1. Yes. So they realize it, and And of course, they run into perfection. We see Jamie, I'm open, pass it to me, pass it to me.
Pass me the ball, here I am, ball. That's perfect imitation of Ted Lasso, where, of course, is the decoy.
Yep.
And they pass it to Samo Basanya, and he scores.
And he says barbecue sauce.
Barbecue
sauce. That was perfect.
Perfect. So we see this perfect ending. Of course, they blow the whistle. The match is over. AFC Richmond wins it all. Or we think. Yes. We have this great celebration, this conclusion. Everybody is celebrating. Everyone comes down. The fans rush the field. Ted does his little running man dance, another callback to season. And then my favorite part, right? Not just the dance, but our friend Colin gets to kiss his fella.
Yep.
So we see him like he sort of comes out here, but he's not going to be this poster child for the LGBTQ community necessarily. He's not going to be this poster child and this, make a huge deal out of it.
He wants to live his life. Yeah.
That kiss alone, I mean, people saw that, so like comfortable in his own skin finally. And what a beautiful moment to share. Of course, his boyfriend got into the game with Winona.
Winona Judd.
Which I just thought was cute. We know Jason and Winona are friends in real life. So yeah, just what a beautiful conclusion on the field there. And until the next scene, we think that they win it all.
Absolutely. And the next scene is Ted in the airport getting ready to leave. And we see another callback to both the first and second season with the gentleman who wants an Ussie, which I thought was funny because now Ted knows what an Ussie is because it's not a selfie just by yourself, but an Ussie's with two people.
Yeah. So grown up, man. His voice is so deep now.
And we also saw it was the same guy from the Christmas episode in season 2 where the dentist, part of the dentist family that Roy and Keeley take Phoebe to. Yes. So he was in there multiple times. I thought that was a great callback. And we tells him, hey, sorry that it didn't win. Man City's just so great, but hey, nice job. He asks him if you're going home for a visit. Nope, going home for good. So it was a great way to learn that they didn't win it all.
Yeah, but they got to celebrate like they did, which was nice.
And I think back to a movie that I enjoy, the movie Major League. I'm not sure if you've seen that movie or not.
Yes.
So the Cleveland Indians win the 1-game playoff against the Yankees at the very end, but then they lose out. They don't win it, the whole big thing. They don't win the World Series or nothing. And that's what it really reminded me of, was that. It was just like, they got to enjoy their victory over the team that had tormented them. So they got over that mountaintop, but they didn't have to win it all because that was enough of a victory for them.
And I'm okay with that. And you know what? Yeah. Maybe all next year, right? So that could be next season. But I feel the same way. I thought I would want them to win the whole thing, but I'm glad that we were tricked into thinking they did because we got to have that celebration with them.
Mm-hmm.
Found out afterwards, you know what? It was fine. Yeah. Other things to find out afterwards, right? Ted's obviously going home. He's heading to his plane, but he's got to stop by the magazine stand. And we see these magazines displayed. Now, if you read them in detail, of course, which us Ted Lasso fans, we do with every, we get to find out little things about the other characters, right? Yep. So we find that Rupert is out. We find out that Bex, if you read it, she's very happily divorced and is selling. She has this new business that's doing very well, giving out advice for new moms and selling placenta pill recipes, which is so perfect for her. Glad she's well. We also find out that the assistant was the whistleblower who told on Bert, and that she's also doing well, and her testimony was accepted throughout the soccer world. But the biggest things that we find out is that Rebecca has sold 49% of the team back to the fans. So she probably a lot more money by selling it to investors, but she only sold it to people who live in the Richmond area and who have season tickets. So we get the three boys, the pub boys,
and
were
May
holding their one share,
yeah.
and the whole stack of shares. I just thought that was a really neat moment that it never was just their team. They were just borrowing.
Right. And that proved it right there. I mean, that's what Ted said as being a coach, that it's not our team. I'm just passing through, and it's really for the fans. Rebecca says the same thing as well. She feels the same way, that, it's not my team. It belongs to the fans. And she truly put her money where her mouth was in that. Like you said, she could have gotten so much more had she went to a private investor, but she did the whole Green Bay Packers type of thing where she sold it back to the fans, and now they have more than just the blood, sweat, and tears into it. They have a financial investment in it. So I thought that was really cool. Yeah.
Well, and I'd like to think that they didn't show this, but I'd like to think that Higgins and his family also bought a couple. Oh, yeah. I'm sure. So what a beautiful way to just really tie up the ending and really give the team back to the fans.
Yeah.
Certainly Rebecca's staying, which I think is great. We find out that Keely has a couple of ideas for her, and I think she came back somewhat to the team. Her and Barbara are now working, I think, out of the AFC Richmond offices, and they renamed our firm KB PR.
Yeah.
Barbara PR. We also find out that Sharon is back.
Yes,
right?
That was cool.
Is of Dr. Sharon watching the game, and all the stuff like that. And she's now with the team. We finally see that Roy goes to therapy with her. So I love that
he goes to therapy as the new manager of AFC Richmond. So there was a press conference where of course Rebecca introduces the new manager, which is also a throwback to when Ted got first introduced. And that was really cool. I was a bit surprised that it was Roy Kent and not Nate. My money was on Nate to become the new manager, because it's more of the it's the part that Roy isn't good at, the strategy part of it. But they chose Roy, so that's fine. I'm cool with that.
Well, we do. Nate got a promotion, and it looks like at least back on the coaching staff.
Oh yeah. So we see real quick on the airplane, we learn that Coach Beard has been dreading talking to Ted about a certain topic, that he doesn't want to go back home. He's in love with Jane and he wants to stay. So he fakes an appendix injury. I thought that was hilarious because he's like, my appendix. And Ted's like, the other side, my appendix.
Yeah.
I thought that was
Beard's first name.
Yes, we do. That was Willis. And I wonder if that's has anything, what the meaning is behind that. They chose that for a reason. Why did they choose that name? We'll find out maybe in season 4 if there is one. Another magazine that you left out that was really cool is that we learned that Zava is now playing soccer again, or football, for LAFC because they have avocado toast there.
Yes, and they love their avocado toast in California. I thought sent the team a whole huge avocado before the game. I thought that was perfect. Man, what else? Oh, yes. I mean, we went through Coach Beard on the plane. They asked, of course, before he said that, another callback to season 1. Man, is it nuts that we're doing this?
Yeah.
Right? Very reminiscent. But my favorite scene was in the airport right before Ted gets on the plane. We have this very emotional goodbye between Rebecca and Ted. I think maybe they're going to kiss. Doesn't happen. But it seems like they both sort of want to say, hey, I love you. You know, you're my best friend. They don't quite say that, but you can tell that they're both sort of holding something back.
Yeah, that's true.
Very difficult emotional goodbye, where I don't think they say everything that they want to say, but they say just enough. And then Rebecca, of course, is crying. And man, the acting in that scene alone, man, another time that I cried was right there. So they have this very emotional hug, say goodbye. Hey, you changed my life for the better, you know, and Ted leaves. But let's get to the end. The final thing. I know this is probably the longest episode that we've had. There's a lot to talk about.
Well, real quick, we see Coach Beard getting married, and everyone that was there, and there's one person who wasn't there, which I thought was odd. And so it leads me to believe that, there was a lot of speculation. Was it a dream sequence of Ted Lasso?
Yes.
Or did it really happen?
What do you think?
I think, for me personally, I think everything other than Coach Beard's wedding happened.
I agree.
Coach Beard the wedding had a little different feel to it. It was more ethereal. It had more of a dreamlike sequence to me.
Yes.
So I felt maybe if anything was a dream, it was that. Because why would not Ted Lasso be at his best friend's wedding?
He would totally be there. He'd
be the best man.
He would be the best man. Yes, he wouldn't. And people were saying, oh, well, how could it be a dream, if these people that Ted never knew about were there? Like the people from the Coach Beard After Dark episode, the couple was there, and all these other characters were there. How could that be a dream sequence? Ted never knew them. That doesn't mean that tell Ted about them.
Exactly. You don't think Beard would tell Ted about his wild night?
I mean, sometimes he may or may not have. I don't know. But I think we had a feeling the end might be a little up to interpretation.
Yeah.
And everything that you said, I'm in the camp of I think half of it was real. I think everything or the wedding scene really happened.
Yeah, I agree.
Feel the same way. I think it's up in the air. We can decide for ourselves because the sunlight from that wedding scene and this ethereal, dream-like, whimsical wedding, it just didn't look right. And light is in the very next scene where Ted kind of wakes up from the turbulence on the plane.
Yep.
Right? He lands in Kansas City. We can, I'm in the camp where I'm going to think that wasn't real. And that was part of the dream because I do like to think that Ted would have been there. Yeah. So other people are saying, no, it was real. It just happened. Ted just happened to not be there because he chose to be with his son at his soccer game instead. I can see both sides, but I like to choose to believe that Ted wouldn't not be there for his best friend's wedding.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
At the end, of course, we see Ted go home to his house in Kansas City, but we only see him bring a suitcase, right? So is he really moving in and getting back together with Michelle, or is he just kind of maybe temporarily living there until he finds his own place? We don't know, but it ends at a soccer game. He's coaching, Henry's little league. We see Michelle in the background on the stands cheering them on. Notice she didn't have a ring on, right? And during the game, we see her and Henry kind of getting annoyed with Dr. Face.
Dr. Jake,
Jake, right? He's just kind of being a jerk. And I think Michelle dumped him after that.
Yeah.
And he just clearly realized he wasn't a good fit. And I think him actually moving away from the couch during that game and moving back behind them is sort of metaphorical for okay, well, he's not a good fit. And they're putting some distance between them. So I think that they broke up, but I don't think that Ted and Michelle are getting back together. I think they're just trying to co-parent.
Yeah, I mean, that's also up for interpretation, I think. It really is. I mean, she says something about my boys getting it done or something like that. She uses the word boys. So it means, I think, both of them. So, yeah, I don't know where that's going. And will we ever learn the truth about it? I don't know. But I think the more important thing is after Henry misses the shot, Lasso calls him over. What do we say? Be a goldfish.
Yep.
And I think that's a callback, the whole game, to when Ted was in the locker room and he says that he got to see who they were and he gets a front row seat to see where his son is going.
Yes.
And I think that was the most important part.
Number 9.
Yes, that's true. Number 9.
So there's a little bit of the AFC Richmond there as well, and that's it. I mean, that's how it is. Right? It starts with Ted's face in the airport, all grumpy, sad, heartbroken, and then it ends on this close-up of him kind of breaking the fourth wall, looking at the camera. And people are torn on this as well.
Yeah.
is he truly happy? Or is there kind of, is he putting aside his own wants and dreams and sort of settling, right? Because the song that played on the plane is about a father coming back for the sake of his son and sort of settling and doing everything that they wanted rather than what the dad wants, which I thought was an interesting song choice. And then the end song, I think, was also the same song that they played at the end of season 2 when Nate was staring into the camera.
Yeah. So, yeah. That whole energetic, frenetic type of thing. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Fate. It kind of had a very Inception-esque ending, which you and I sort of predicted. But up to interpretation. You can say whatever you want about it and believe it, and nobody else can argue, right? So I kind of like that, but I also sort of hate it because I want a solid conclusion. To me, it felt way like his "We Are the Millers" ending, right? Where he kind of looks at the camera and he's like,
"Yeah,
that's what I." But I don't know. I got an uneasiness when I saw his face at the end.
I think it was that music that made you feel uneasy because it wasn't a happy ending type of sound. It was really like a throwback to Nate on the West Ham pitch. And it really gave you that feeling of maybe he's not in the right place.
Yes. And he says it perfectly, right? He says back in the speech, he says there's no place like home.
But there's also no place like
Dorothy reference, but there's also no place like AFC Richmond. Mm-hmm. So you're exactly what you said, I think, is how I felt. Like, is he in the right place? Did he make the right choice? I don't know. It's your interpretation, and that's why I think there will be some more Ted Lasso. I don't think the Ted Lasso universe is over. Will we get
I don't think so.
More Jason Sudeikis? I don't know, but we'll see. And how beautiful is that, right? It may or may not be.
Absolutely. But I will say, though, to all the creators of this show, Brett Goldstein, Joe Kelly, Brendan Hunt, Bill Lawrence, Jason Sudeikis, thank you for inviting us into this world these past 3 seasons. Thank you for making us feel like we are part of the team and part of the family. Yes. And so no matter what happens in the future, we have these moments. And I think there's no better way to end this episode than to call it the title of the series finale or season finale. So long, farewell.
Yes. Oh man. Yes. Thank you to everybody. This changed our lives. You know? So we'll leave it there. And I'm just thankful for these 4 years. Can't wait to see what comes.
Absolutely. So long, everyone. Farewell.
Farewell. Thanks for hanging out with us.